My name is Evelyn, and this happened 3 summers ago. Every July, when school lets out and the heat makes the air feel like soup, my husband Liam and I pack up our 2 boys and head south for a vacation. It's something we've always done. My parents started the tradition when I was young, and I guess it's stuck. Sunburns, cheap beach motels, melting popsicles, sand everywhere for weeks after. We loved it. That year, our boys were 6 and 9, and we decided they were finally old enough to handle an overnight drive. We live in Richmond, Virginia, and we were headed to Tybee Island, Georgia. Roughly an 8-hour drive, if traffic behaves. Our plan was simple. Leave by 10:30 p.m., drive through the night while the kids slept in the back seat, and reach the beach by sunrise. Nap for an hour or 2 in the hotel parking lot if we arrived early, then check in and hit the waves. We had no idea that we were about to come dangerously close to someone that would haunt us for a long time. The boys fell asleep within an hour of leaving. I took the first shift driving, while Liam rested. The roads were quiet, just the hum of tires and the occasional glow of headlights behind us. I had my playlist on low and a Red Bull in the cup holder. Everything felt calm, but somewhere outside Fayetteville, North Carolina, around 3:00 a.m., the rain started. And I mean rain. Not a drizzle, not a polite summer storm. This was a wall of water crashing against the windshield, the kind of rain that swallows the road whole and turns headlights into smudges. I slowed to a crawl, blinkers on, straining to see the painted lines. I was white-knuckling the wheel, heartbeat thumping in my ears, vision blurring from stress. Liam stirred. I could tell he hated when I drove in bad weather. He always felt better behind the wheel. We switched seats at a truck stop exit. No words exchanged, just quiet frustration and tired nods. I took over trying to nap in the passenger seat. The kids were still dead asleep in the back, heads tilted, their little chests rising and falling. I tucked a blanket over them and tried to settle. Liam drove for maybe 15 minutes before pulling off onto one of those weird, empty roadside shoulders. No lights, no signage, just a stretch of nothing. He muttered something about hydroplaning and needing to wait it out. I offered to drive again. He was exhausted and could barely keep his eyes open. He hesitated, then nodded. We switched again, and I climbed back into the driver's seat. The rain kept pounding, but I stayed put for a while, just listening to the storm. A pair of headlights in the rear-view mirror, blindingly bright. They weren't there a moment ago. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe someone else had pulled over to wait out the rain like we had. Maybe a delivery truck or someone checking a map. But the lights didn't move. They stayed pointed straight at us, illuminating the inside of our car with an eerie white-blue glow. Through the soaked back window, only shadows melting into darkness. I could barely make out the outline of a large SUV, black or dark gray, parked unusually close behind us. Still no flashing lights, so not police, and too boxy for a tow truck. Something felt off. I locked the doors, more out of instinct than anything else. I turned down the podcast, took out my earbuds, and stared into the mirror. That's when the lights turned off. Not gradually, not one by one, just click. Total darkness behind us, except for the glow of our own hazard lights flickering on the wet asphalt. I sat up straight, my pulse thudding hard in my throat. I blinked, trying to see past the raindrops streaking across the back window. And then I saw it. The driver's side door of the SUV whipped open. A man stepped out. I could only make out his silhouette in the pulse of red flashing light reflecting off the rain. He was tall, taller than Liam by a good few inches, and bulky. He wore some kind of heavy jacket, maybe a hood. I couldn't see his face. He didn't check his engine, didn't open the hood, didn't mess with a tire. Instead, he began walking toward our car, slowly, like he was waiting to be noticed. I shook Liam awake immediately. "Hey, someone's coming. I don't know who it is," I whispered, trying not to panic the kids in case they were waking up. Liam blinked, groggy. "What? Who?" "I don't know. Just stay quiet." The man reached my window and tapped. Not a hard knock, just a tap, tap, tap. He then made a gentle circular motion with his hand, telling me to roll the window down. I cracked it an inch. "Can I help you?" He leaned down, water dripping off his hood. His voice was gravelly and low, almost rehearsed. "Evening, ma'am. Sorry to bother. My SUV's out of gas a few miles back. Someone dropped me here. Any chance you could give me a lift to the nearest station?" Something about his tone made my stomach twist. It wasn't apologetic. It wasn't desperate. It was too casual. Like he already knew I would say no and wanted to see how I'd say it. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I have kids sleeping in the back. There's no room. I'll call roadside assistance for you." I could feel Liam tense beside me. The man leaned a little to the side and looked into the back seat. I saw his eyes narrow slightly as he spotted our sons. "Oh," he said flatly, "you have kids." Then, with that same eerie calmness, he straightened up. "Never mind then. You folks have a safe night." And just like that, he turned and walked back to the SUV. But he didn't get in right away. He stood next to the driver's door for a few seconds, facing our car. Then, finally, he got in and drove away. No engine trouble, no hesitation, just gone. I didn't realize how badly I was shaking until Liam reached over and turned off the hazard lights. My fingers had gone numb, curled tight around the wheel. "Start the car," he said, his voice low and urgent. I did. We pulled back onto the road and didn't stop until we hit a brightly lit gas station an hour later. The boys were still asleep, thank God. Liam called the police while I tried to calm down. We told them what happened, described the SUV. Black or dark gray, no plates that we could make out. Big guy, hooded, lied about needing help. The officer was polite, but I could tell they didn't take it seriously. "Did he threaten you?" they asked. "Did he try to break in? Brandish a weapon?" No. He didn't need to. That's what made it worse. We never told the boys. We still haven't. And maybe we won't until they're older. But sometimes, when it rains at night, I find myself watching the rearview mirror a little too closely. Every set of headlights feels like they're watching. Every car pulled off on the shoulder sends a chill up my spine. I keep thinking about how easily that moment could have gone differently if I had rolled the window down more, if I hadn't said I had children, if we hadn't locked the doors, or worst of all, if I had been asleep when he tapped. We always think we'd know when danger is nearby, that we'd feel it coming. But sometimes it just steps out of a car, smiles, and asks for a ride. My name is Marcus Nolan. I'm 29, and up until last year, I'd never had what people would call a real vacation. Working double shifts at a welding shop for 6 years will do that to you. You get used to burning through your 20s, just trying to stay afloat. Rent, gas, food, repeat. But last fall, after one of our clients paid up big on a long-delayed contract, I finally got something I hadn't had since high school. A paid week off. I was too broke to fly anywhere. Hell, I didn't even have a passport. So I figured I'd do what all broke adults eventually do, a staycation. I lived alone in a rental just outside Hilliard, Ohio, a quiet suburban pocket with rows of identical houses and retired people walking dogs at sunrise. I had this whole plan. Clean the garage, repaint the bedroom, clear the overgrown shrubs behind the fence, maybe even beat that goddamn game I kept restarting every 6 months. A week to do nothing and feel good about it. But that's not what happened. Because on the third night, I realized something was watching me. And it wasn't human curiosity. It was intent. It started small. I'd just finished dinner, leftovers and a warm beer, and I was watching reruns of some old show I didn't care about. I heard shouting outside. Not close, just faint. When I stepped out on my porch, I saw about a dozen teenagers down the block near the intersection. They were moving slowly, not walking home, not playing, just sort of existing, lurking. One of them was crouched beside a mailbox like he was tying a shoe, but there was no motion, just stillness. Another one was walking in wide circles, head tilted up like he was staring at the sky. No phones, no earbuds, just quiet movement. A weird kind of group silence. I stood there for a minute. They didn't acknowledge me. I shook it off. Figured they were just weird kids. Maybe high, maybe bored. But later that night, around midnight, I saw them again. This time, they were closer. 2 of them standing on my neighbor's front lawn, just watching my house. No movement, no talking. I turned off the living room light, walked to the kitchen window, and peered out. They hadn't moved. No flicker of their heads, no shift of their weight. I should have called someone. But part of me, the logical, adult part, said, "It's just some teens." I went to bed. The next day I stayed in, trying to keep to my vacation plan. Cleaned the attic, did laundry, played that game. But even during the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. like I was being observed through walls. I kept hearing subtle taps, not knocks, not loud, just tap, tap, like fingernails against glass. Around 6 p.m., I went outside to toss some trash. That's when I noticed a symbol drawn in sidewalk chalk at the end of my driveway. It wasn't a pentagram or anything cartoonish. It was just a circle with a vertical line slashing through the middle and 4 dots at the corners. It looked ancient and messy, like it had been scratched in haste. I looked around. The street was empty. Not a single person in sight. No kids, no cars. That night, I couldn't sleep. At around 2:15 a.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't move at first. I just stared at the ceiling and held my breath, hoping maybe I imagined it. Then it rang again. Short, shrill, too fast, like whoever pressed it didn't know or care how doorbells are supposed to work. I tiptoed to the window, crouched low, and peeked out from the corner of the curtain. 3 teenagers stood at my doorstep, same ones from the other night. I recognized the tall one, pale, shaved head, wore a blue hoodie with the sleeves cut off. The second kid was shorter, and I swear he had black paint under his eyes. The third, I still can't describe him fully, just stood wrong. His body language felt unnatural, like he was mimicking how humans are supposed to stand. None of them were talking. None of them were even looking directly at the door. But then they all looked up at once, like they heard something I didn't. And the tall one smiled. He stepped forward and knocked, slow and deliberate, 5 times. I couldn't move. Then he whispered something. Even from behind the glass, I swear I heard it. "We know you're in there, Marcus." I backed away, trying not to breathe. My phone was on the kitchen counter. I crawled, literally crawled, to it and dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm and polite, like they're trained to be. I whispered that there were people outside my house trying to get in. She told me to stay on the line. I asked her if officers could come fast. She said they were on their way. But then the banging started. Not just fists, metal, clangs, echoing hits against the front door, against the side windows, like they had pipes or bats or crowbars. I didn't know how many of them there were now. It sounded like more than 3. One of them shouted, "Let us in, Marcus. We're not here to hurt you." Another voice, deeper, raspier, said, "Not yet, anyway." I ran upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom, hiding in the tub like some horror movie cliché. I waited, and then silence. The cops showed up 20 minutes later. Too late. The teens were gone. No damage to the house, except for some scratches on the window frames. The officers searched the area, asked some questions, took my statement. They left after assuring me it was probably a random prank and that I shouldn't worry. But they didn't see what I saw the next morning. When I went out to get the mail, I saw something new. That same symbol, the one from before, was carved into my mailbox this time. Not chalked, carved, etched into the metal with something sharp. And underneath it was a word, soon. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I started keeping a crowbar by the bed and a kitchen knife on the coffee table. I set up motion lights, bought cameras. Nothing happened again. No more visits, no more chalk, no more whispers at the door. But I still left. I broke my lease 2 months early, paid the penalty, moved out. I never found out who those kids were. No arrests were made. The police didn't care. Said I was lucky nothing was stolen or broken. But something was broken. In me. Because now, even a random knock at my door freezes me in place. I never open my door without checking the peephole 5 times. I flinch at the sound of skateboard wheels on concrete. And every so often, I dream of that symbol, the circle, the slash, the 4 dots. And in the dream, it burns, like it's been carved into me too. I don't know what you believe in, ghosts, demons, stalkers, cryptids, and honestly, I don't care. This isn't a story meant to convince you of anything. I just need to tell it, because I still wake up some nights with that smell stuck in my nose, and that sound in my ears. This happened 2 summers ago, when my cousin Layla and I rented an old Victorian guest house in Bar Harbor, Maine. I'd just gone through a breakup, and she'd just quit her job. We figured a little beach town soul recovery was overdue. Lobster rolls, foggy mornings, reading books on rocky cliffs, that kind of thing. The house was gorgeous. Way too big for 2 people, honestly. 4 bedrooms, a dusty library, and this long, creaking hallway that felt like it belonged in a Bram Stoker novel. It had that classic New England charm. You know, faded wallpaper, brass fixtures, uneven floors. Everything smelled like ocean salt and attic wood. But most importantly, it was cheap. Too cheap, maybe. The first couple of nights were quiet. We'd hike Acadia during the day, hang out in town in the evening, and then crash early. On the 3rd night, though, something woke me up around 3:10 a.m. It was a scratching. Not like a rat or a mouse. I've lived in city apartments. I know that sound. No, this was deliberate, rhythmic. It was coming from the back door. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, convinced my ears were misfiring. But then it stopped. And was immediately followed by 3 soft knocks. Not banging, not impatient, just polite. I stayed in bed, didn't move a muscle, and then, after maybe a minute of silence, I heard footsteps walking away across the porch. I told myself it was a raccoon, or a drunk neighbor, or just my imagination, still spinning from lack of sleep. The next morning, I didn't even mention it to Layla. It felt too stupid. We had breakfast at this cafe on Cottage Street and walked around the shore. There were families playing with their kids, old couples holding hands. Everything felt perfectly normal. But then we came back to the house around noon. I was unlocking the door when Layla suddenly grabbed my arm. "Do you smell that?" she asked. It was faint, but sharp, rotting seawater. Like when a fish dies and gets baked in the sun for too long. The porch smelled like decay. We looked around. No dead animals, no trash, no spilled food. Just that heavy, low-tide stench clinging to the boards. I still didn't tell her what I'd heard the night before. That night, we both stayed up late, watching old VHS movies we found in the guest house's den. There was no AC, so we had the windows cracked open. Around 2:45 a.m., I went to use the bathroom, and then made a mistake I'll never forget. I peeked out the kitchen window. There, standing in the backyard, half shrouded by trees, was a man. Not moving, not pacing, just standing there, staring up at the house. He was too far to make out any clear features, but his posture was wrong. Like he was leaning forward, shoulders hunched unnaturally, neck extended. I ducked down. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would echo. I whispered for Layla. She was dozing off on the couch and snapped awake when I shook her. I told her not to scream, not to panic, but there was someone outside. Together, we crept to the front window and peeked from the side. The backyard was empty. "Are you sure it wasn't a tree?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I saw him. I swear to God." She stared at me. "Then where are his footprints?" We both went out the next morning. The backyard was soft from fog and rain, and I mean soft. Even our own steps left clear impressions in the soil. But we searched for over an hour and found nothing. Not a single footprint leading up to the house. Nothing except a long, thin drag mark that curved across the grass like something had been dragged through it. We considered leaving, even packed a little. But the place was already paid for, and, as Layla kept reminding me, this is probably just some weird townie playing jokes. I agreed, sort of. That night, we double-checked every door and window. Layla even shoved a chair under her doorknob. I slept with the lamp on. I was nearly asleep, nearly, when I heard breathing. It wasn't in the room. It was just outside my door. It was wet, strained, like someone with water in their lungs trying to inhale slowly. I sat up in bed, eyes wide, chest frozen. Then the breathing stopped, and the knob started to turn. It didn't rattle violently. It wasn't some home invasion movie. It was quiet, subtle, as if someone was just politely trying to check if the door was unlocked. I whispered Layla's name. She didn't answer. My voice cracked when I whispered again. No response. Then I heard a whisper from the hallway. Low, male, hoarse. It said, "You shouldn't be here." The next thing I remember is waking up at sunrise, still in bed, the lamp still on, door still locked. I went straight to Layla's room, and she opened it before I even knocked. Her face was pale. She hadn't slept either. "I heard it too," she said. "I didn't want to say anything, but I swear I saw him." She'd looked out the second-story window in the middle of the night and saw the same hunched figure standing by the edge of the trees, just watching, still, silent. We left that day, didn't even bother getting our deposit back. It took weeks to shake the feeling that someone was still watching me. I started checking every window twice, locking my bedroom door even in my apartment. I avoided coastal towns. I couldn't even walk through wet grass without scanning for footprints. But the worst part, 2 months later, Layla forwarded me an article from a Bar Harbor local blog. It was about a property dispute involving the old guest house we'd stayed in. Apparently, back in the 90s, it was owned by a man named Everett Barrow, a loner, rarely seen in town. He refused to sell the land even after offers from developers. When he died, the house was left to rot. He had no family, no known history, no traceable past. But the neighbors swore they still saw him in the windows, years after his death, watching, waiting. They called him the man with no footprints. I don't know what we encountered. I don't know if it was Everett or something else that attached itself to that land. But I do know one thing for certain. Whatever was outside that house, it didn't want us there. And I think it still doesn't.